Welcome in to the Flight Plan Podcast. Tim McMaster here, along with Zach Rosenblatt, the Jets reporter at The Athletic, who is in an undisclosed location right now. It's a hotel room. It may looks like probably Marriott decor.
That's nice little courtyard situation.
But overall, we're not going to say where you are, but you're working on a story.
Yeah.
Which is much more exciting than probably checking in on the Jets this week, considering the state of the team, the state of the mood of the fan base, all that stuff. But we're going to get into Aaron Rodgers talking this week about whether he's going to return in 2025. We'll talk about the tackling issues, what the Jets are trying to do to fix that. Olu versus Tyron Smith at left tackle, and we'll get you ready for the Colts. So a lot to get to. But first, Zach, can you hint us any little hint about what you're doing in this hotel?
I can't because the story's not coming out for a little bit, but it's a story I'm very excited to write. There's people are going to guess what it is. They're not going to be able to guess because it's not directly tied to the Jets, is what I would say. It's more an at-large NFL thing, but I'm trying to be vague. It's something I'm very excited about. So I'm not in Jersey this week. I'll be back for the game on Sunday, and I'm sure it'll be a lovely football evening. Or afternoon, actually, because we got flexed out of the evening, which was the best news of the year so far, in my opinion. I think Jets fans actually agreed based on the reactions. But I'll be back for that. But yeah, I'm here working, talking to some people for something, and that's the most I'm going to give you. Sorry, guys. I'm not in a place that I am excited to be in, though. I'll say that. That's a tease I'll give you.
Well, that is a pretty good hint, actually, because there's a lot of people who know me where you'd be like, "Hey, I'm getting to go here for this story," and this is more of like a. Well, I got to go here for the story. But last time you did this, it ended up being obviously the background Aaron Rodgers story, which is really good. Talking about his connection to his hometown and all that stuff. So when you're on location and you're not allowed to tell us where, I feel like there's always some. Let's start building the excitement about what Zach's doing. Where in the world is Zach Rosenblatt? All right, let's get into the Jets. Obviously, it's kind of fallout week to a degree when you have a game like last week where season's on the line, team loses, that's it. It's kind of like, okay, let's officially start looking to next year in a lot of ways that we'll get into over the coming weeks. But one direct way that came up this week at practice, and you mentioned you weren't there, but Aaron Rodgers was asked, hey, are you going to play in 2025? And this was Aaron Rodgers' reaction.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. That's going to be our new drop sound.
I think so, yeah.
We're gonna.
I think so, yeah.
It was just an interesting way of phrasing it. Like, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, sure.
So in one hand, you could say, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers coming back," but on the other hand, you could say, like, he was asked a random question, and the first thing that popped into his head was to say, "Yeah." So I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think anything different based on that press conference. Like, everybody's reacting like he's for sure coming back next year, and he might be planning on playing in 2025. And I can elaborate that in a second. But like, he's in the past has been way more definitive than that. Like, I think it was last year where he said he'd want to play 3 or 4 more years. Like, that's a little different tone than I think so. Yeah, and nothing that's happened this season has changed things for you, not in the negative. So like, that's all we got out of it.
That was the follow-up. Yeah,
I wasn't there, but the proverbial we or whatever, or the royal we, as they say. But yeah, there's so many unknown factors that, like, number one, like, does he want to play? Like, obviously that's a big factor. It seems like he does, but I don't know. The season's gone very poorly, and I think he's pretty self-aware to see that he's declining, or maybe he attributes it to his Achilles. Like, I don't know, but he's very clearly not the same player. He is still not bad, but he is not the same player. And he has more bad games than he ever has. And can you win playoff games with Aaron Rodgers after a 17-game season? I don't know. But in terms of the Jets, number one, they likely are going to have a new GM, likely have a new head coach. And there's the Woody Johnson thing that's looming over all this. Like, if Woody leaves for the Trump administration, then Christopher Johnson and Aaron Rodgers are very close. So hypothetically, that would make it more likely that he stays. But at the same time, there's the two-sided thing of, will a new GM or head coach want Aaron Rodgers? Like, how appealing does it make the job if you have to inherit a turning 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers? And on the flip side of that, does Aaron Rodgers want to be forced to do a system that he doesn't like with a new head coach, or, work with a GM that he's never worked with before. Like, there's two sides to that coin. I don't know how many.
Well, that offensive system that he's currently running, there's not going to be an option to run that elsewhere.
Yes, that's true. I mean, yeah, unless he went to play for Mike McCarthy or something, but or Nathaniel Hackett got another shot at a head coaching job. But yeah, so I'm not convinced he's a Jets quarterback in 2025. Like, if I was putting a percentage on it, put like 50-50 shot. Like, that's where I would be right now. And I think that there are people who wonder if he would want to keep going if the season keeps going the way it is. Like, he's trying to put on his best face and say all the right things about, you have to be the same every day, and how they bounce back from this. But like, they're already pretty much out of the playoffs. I know you can say whatever you want. If they beat the Colts, people are going to go back to the mathematics, but they're not making the playoffs this season. And I'm not even convinced they're going to beat the Colts, frankly. So, like, if it keeps going down this path and this team finishes with 4 wins, maybe 5 wins at most, maybe not at most, but like if they go in the 3 to 5 win range, I think you blow everything up at that point. And I think nothing is off the table. And, there's a lot of issues in this building that aren't even necessarily Rodgers. I think it starts at the top are the biggest issues, and the way this organization is run and all that stuff. But if I'm a GM coming to a new team, I do not want to come to a team where I'm being force-fed a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers and all that comes with him, both on the field where he demands full control and off the field where you get the whole circus that comes with it. So I don't know. There's so many factors that I think it's way too early to say he's going to be the quarterback. If we're predicting like right this minute, maybe I say, okay, yeah, he'll be the quarterback, because I don't really know what their other options are right now. And we don't know who the GM is going to be and all that stuff. But if you ask me at the end of the season, I think I'll probably have a different answer.
The one thing I would say if you're making a pros and cons list of wanting Aaron Rodgers back or not, like, depending on where they draft and depending on whether they end up taking a quarterback in the first round, which makes sense, although we keep talking about this quarterback class, but who knows what changes between now and then. Like, a year ago at this time, like, nobody was talking about Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. They end up being like top 10 picks. Now, it hasn't, Bo Nix
he's played better lately, actually.
Yeah, better lately. That's true. And Michael Penix is obviously waiting. But if they do end up taking a quarterback, like, it's probably not the worst thing in the world to have a Hall of Famer start for a year and have your young quarterback that you drafted learn from him. I mean, it worked for Aaron Rodgers.
Yep. Worked for Jordan Love.
And it didn't work going the other way with Zach Wilson. That's for sure. So, like, that would be a positive. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that, because there was a comment that Rodgers made on McAfee the other day, and it was about this conversation, and it turned into a conversation that it felt like he was kind of taking a shot at Woody. But he was talking about teams like are really rash in their decision making with quarterbacks. They give up on them too quick. I think it was centered around Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson. And he's right about that. Teams do give up quick, or maybe, and his point was like that they don't let these guys sit for a year anymore, like I did, like Jordan Love did, like Patrick Mahomes
did.
Yeah. But then he started getting into, owners listen to social media too much. They listen to the voices outside to influence their decision making, which, I think, as Diane and I reported in January, like, it's pretty well known that Woody Johnson is influenced by Twitter a little too much. So, or X, I guess. I'm never.
He's going to be contributing to AI starting Friday.
Yeah, I mean, he might be working with Elon Musk, who's in the Trump White House. So.
That's true.
But yeah, so to your point, like, yeah, I think that is appealing. I don't know enough about these quarterback. I know the names, and I know the ones that are being touted as like the first round picks. It seems like they all have flaws. I know Cam Ward is probably the one that's talked about as like number one guy right now. You hear Shedeur Sanders.
Our latest mock actually has Shedeur going 3.
Wow.
And Cam Ward going 5. But Dane puts in the write up, like, I wouldn't take him at 3, but it's the Raiders, so who knows?
Yeah, it's not I mean, look, like you said, like, you don't. A lot of times the drafts that aren't supposed to be good quarterbacks wind up being good ones.
Let me just jump in real quick too. Like, the Jets couldn't take Sanders because Dion came out yesterday and said if he doesn't go to the right team with the right setup, he's going to step in and like pull like an Eli Manning.
He said that yesterday? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
So he's actually saying it out loud now?
He's saying it out loud that, like, if he doesn't go to the right system, he's going to step in.
Oh, my God.
So, like, the Jets are not that. Like,
I mean, unless they wanted to hire Dion with it, like, as I joked.
Right.
In my thing. But
that would do it. That would get him there.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, sorry, I cut you off. But
no, you're right.
Didn't know, I knew you were traveling. Didn't know.
Oh, man, that would be
tidbit.
That would be kind of. I mean, it feels like the most Jetsian thing that could happen is they draft the guy, they get excited about him, and then his dad steps in and said he ain't playing for you. So
right.
It's because I don't think because the Jets won't have a number one pick, and I don't think he'll go number one. So, man, wow, that's funny. He's just coming out and saying it like months before the draft, whereas the Mannings at least tried to hide that they were doing it. I don't even think they admit it to this day. So,
I think the Mannings waited until like kind of draft week, right? Like it was kind of like, hey,
Although that social media wasn't as big back then, so like who knows how different it would look right now. True. But yeah, I mean, maybe people should wait for Arch Manning. I think he's the next big one a year or two from now. But yeah, it's not a great quarterback class, and I think there's even an argument you can make if you don't like these quarterbacks, whoever the GM is, to just picking whether it's an offensive lineman or whatever it is, like just having the roster ready for when you find the franchise quarterback, as opposed to when teams do the opposite, where they get the young quarterback and they like Zach Wilson. I mean, who wasn't good, but you get him and the roster around him is terrible. So like, he's not going to be good with a bad team. So there's different theories on how to approach it. But I mean, I think they should draft a quarterback, frankly, and develop him, like you said, whether it's behind Aaron Rodgers or Tyrod Taylor, who I believe is under contract next year. Yeah, he is. He's under contract. He has a $6.8 million cap hit next year. So, I mean, Tyrod's been the bridge like so many times in his career, accidentally a lot of the times, where he would get like hurt and then the guy would come in, like Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert. I think there was another one. I think in Houston he got hurt and Davis Mills took over. Like, he's just had the worst luck with it. But yeah, I think the route that I would go is you go Tyrod and a rookie. If you think you can win some games next year, which I don't know. I think they probably need to blow everything up. But if you think you win some games, maybe you stick it out with Rodgers one more year and you draft somebody and you hope that he develops him and all that stuff. But do they really want to go back to the circus again? Like, this was, the circus isn't as much of a circus if they're winning. And will they be much better next year with a year older Aaron Rodgers, year older Devontae Adams, all these holes they have on the roster? They have so many guys hitting free agency that they need to decide on. And once you sign those guys, you're going to run out of cap space real quick. Like, it's not a great spot to be in. And that's why it feels like this team needs like a full facelift. And I mean, more than anything, they need an attitude shift. They need a culture change. And so the hope is that whoever they hire as head coach in particular is somebody who can really change things up, because, it's really bad in there right now. And I ranted about it the other day. I don't really have a lot more to say about it, but they have culture problems more than quarterback problems ultimately.
Tyrod Taylor and rookie feels a lot like Jacoby Brissett and Drake May, like what they did in New England, where the plan was to let Brissett play all year. It was just so bad, and May looked pretty good. And you know what? Maybe for some quarterbacks, sitting the first 6 weeks is enough.
Yeah, even if not, but just not playing week one.
Yeah, but week one, I think teams just need to just stop. Like, where Jaden Daniels, like that's not the norm. Like,
and he's also
doing
unique.
It's incredible, but
he's also unique because he played like 5 years in college too. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Caleb Williams is more the norm, where the guy with, is supposed to be that good. There's growing pains. All right. One more thing on Rodgers. There's the money, which most people know about, but $23.5 million is the cap hit next year if he plays. If he's cut or retires, it's $49 million dead cap charge. If that's post June 1st, they can split that over 2 years, $14 million next year, $35 million in 2026. That's just kind of how the money plays out on the Aaron Rodgers situation.
I think so, yeah.
There you go. One more thing on Rodgers coming from last week that we didn't get to talk to because we were focused on the game, although we did speak briefly about Mike Williams.
I think we just missed it when I think the post came after we recorded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mike Williams, obviously, we talked about the fact that he had the game-winning touchdown for the Steelers. And then afterwards, he added to it as far as kind of like a little shot back at his old home. This was his Instagram post. Yes, thankful, great. But then two things on here, Zach. One is the little snake emoji, and then hashtag redline. Can you kind of explain this all? If you're watching, if you're not watching on YouTube, he put on Instagram a picture of himself after the touchdown. The post is thankful with the 3-finger hey, and then the little green snake, and then the hashtags are a whole lotta, we back, and redline.
Yeah, I mean, so snake, I can't say for sure that it's about Rodgers, but surmising just based on the context. And then redline, for anybody who doesn't remember what that is, there was a play. I can't remember which game it was. Was it? Wasn't the Steelers? No, because it was a close game at the end. Maybe it was the Patriots. Anyway, the season has been 5 years. Where Aaron Rodgers threw an interception on the last play, and he threw Mike Williams under the bus after the game, and on McAfee that week. And
was it Vikings in London? Was that game?
No.
No. Okay.
He threw an interception at the end of that game, and that was Rodgers' fault, is what happened.
Yeah, right.
And Rodgers even admitted I underthrew it, but yeah, he said I was basically no looking, and I was going to throw it to him, and he was supposed to be on the red line, but then he cut in, and then I had to adjust. Basically, kept saying the red line over and over again, that he's supposed to be on the red line. Which, if you're at the Jets practice facility, there's a red line that goes along the side, like not at the sideline, like probably 5 yards in, and it goes all the way back. And the idea is he's supposed to stay on that red line for that route. And Rodgers kept saying he threw him on the bus. Mike Williams is not happy about the fact that he did that, even if he played a good soldier. I heard that he was pretty upset about it. And like to the point where they needed to like reconcile those two before continuing, and then they wound up trading him anyway. But anyway, so he scores that touchdown, and Mike Williams throws that hashtag red line on there. It's pretty clearly a troll. Aaron Rodgers was asked about it. He played dumb, and he said he didn't see it, and then somebody told him what it was, and he laughed it off. He's, oh, I like Mike. Aaron Rodgers is on social media. He can, like, the way that he pretends that he does not see everything. Like he was on Pat McAfee the other day, and he's been getting made fun of for this. Like somebody tweeted a fake stat about Jared Goff, and Aaron Rodgers like ran with it on Pat McAfee. And then the guy that tweeted, he's like, well, I made that stat up. So it was like a very easy route to make fun of Rodgers, who number one, acts like he's never on social media. Number two, he's always talking about how well researched he is and all that stuff. So anyway, like he very clearly saw the post, and him and Mike Williams are not fans of each other, and that's okay. Everybody will move on. This will be a blip on the radar of a very insane season, but it's just like another chapter. Like at the end of the season, I'm going to have to just like summarize everything like on a list for myself, even just so I can be like, man, remember when whatever. I can't even think of a good example of something that, I mean, the Aaron Rodgers running for vice president feels like 10 years ago at this point. Bills game. Yeah, it was the Brian Sternbeck point. The red line was from the Bills game. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
My memory is shot from this season. It's just destroyed my brain capacity. But yeah, Mike Williams, good for him. It was the most predictable thing in the entire world that he would score that game-winning touchdown. Like, I think people should.
Maybe he'll be the Super Bowl MVP.
We all should have bet on it, honestly. I mean, I'm not allowed to, but like, the royal we all should have bet on Mike Williams scoring a touchdown in that game. And if there's a way of betting on the game-winning touchdown, because it was going to happen, and he'll probably be good for the Steelers. They're rolling. Russell Wilson is playing very well, and they're kind of like a really good match because Russell Wilson's deep balls, he just kind of throws it up, which is what Mike Williams needs. So the Steelers kind of have something there.
And then Pickens can do the same thing.
Pickens too. And so you have two guys, and Pickens he's like taken off since Russell Wilson got there.
It's like the best setup for a bad, like, well, I shouldn't say bad. He's not a bad. He's a formerly great quarterback, but like a declining quarterback that still throws a good deep ball. Like you couldn't draw it up better than like Mike Williams and
Pickens. And not only that, but they have a great running game, and their defense is very good. Like, so they're all of a sudden look like a sneaky contender, frankly. Anyway, like the Steelers stumbled into being a contender with a quarterback they didn't even want to play to start the season, and a receiver they got off the scrap heap, and the Jets were supposed to be that good and have been a disaster. So anyway,
the difference is what you keep going back to is the culture, right?
Yes,
culture.
Mike Tomlin.
Yep. And he gets a hard time now in Pittsburgh because if you're good for long enough.
Well, it's all relative to expectations because they haven't won in the playoffs in so long, whereas the Jets haven't been to the playoffs in so long. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, you get to a point where having a winning record every year for like 20 years isn't enough. But like, we take it over here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on from all the Rodgers stuff. The biggest issue last week wasn't Rodgers, although he was a big issue. It was the tackling and the way the Cardinals just tore through this defense. So, Zach, what are they doing about it? Because tackling is a teachable skill that this team was good at one point. So how do you get back to this defense being good at something that like made them a top 5 defense for 2 years?
I mean, they're literally going back to fundamentals in week 11 of a football season. They're putting on pads this week, Ulbrich said, and I think his line was, again, I wasn't there, but his line was something like, if we have, let's say we have 7 individual drills, 6 of them will be working on tackling. Like he's just really hammering it. Sauce Gardner, and I think he has the right idea. Sauce Gardner, I thought had a pretty good quote about it. He's like, I appreciate what Jeff is trying to do, but like we know how to tackle. We just need to do it better. Like we're not doing it better. And I think it can become a snowball effect with something like that, where everything's going wrong. All of a sudden, like nobody can tackle, and whether it's the effort or the approach or whatever it is, everybody's mentally out of sorts. I don't necessarily think the poor tackling is coaching, because it's such a fundamental thing that you're supposed to know how to do. Like the Sauce missed. I watched it again yesterday. The Sauce missed tackle on Trey McBride was like so bad. I honestly didn't realize in the moment how much he had him like wrapped up completely. Yeah. Like, and also just, like, tossed him aside.
Right, and this is like, it's a body thing, right? Like it's the way Sauce is built. He's for sure slim.
He's never going to be a good tackler.
That body frame makes him that much better in coverage and everything. Yeah. But like you see how much bigger McBride is. Now that's not an excuse. It's the NFL. No, you need to be able to tackle. But I'm just saying, like he tackled high when maybe he should have gone low.
The concern isn't as much Sauce's tackling as it's the collective team's tackling. Like when when Quincy Williams is missing bad tackles, and Tony Adams, I saw Rich Samini reported they're benching Tony Adams. I don't know how much that changes, but he had a pretty bad. I think he led the team with like 4 missed tackles last week, and I think Chuck Clark is on his way back, so maybe you just swap him out. But yeah, I mean, when you have your safeties and your linebackers and your D linemen missing tackles, that's the issue more than corners. Though I'll say DJ Reed is generally a pretty good tackler for a corner, but it's that was as embarrassing as it gets for a defense that's supposed to be good. The defense since Ulbrich took over has been bad, just in general. Like you look at, I think they're literally last place in EPA since he took over, which I think it's indicative of the fact that he's calling plays while also trying to lead the team and all that stuff. And I think they are missing some of the aspects of game planning that Saleh was good at. Even if Ulbrich was calling the plays, Saleh was very involved in like the game plan each week. So, tackling was an issue when Saleh was there. I do think people forget that. Like they definitely were not like an amazing tackling team with him either. And I keep harping this. Like I get it that it's gotten worse since Saleh got fired, and that was clearly the wrong decision. But I think people are losing sight of the fact that they were not good with Saleh either, and they had a lot of problems. So anyway, like the tackling. We can get into the Colts now if you wanted to save that for later, but them putting
we can go Colts. The only other thing we have besides Colts on the old rundown is Olu, but we can kind of work that into the discussion.
Because the Colts went to Anthony Richardson at quarterback, and I actually I think most Jets fans had the same reaction I did. I saw some people reacting the opposite. Like I don't view this as a good thing. I know Anthony Richardson is maybe not an accurate thrower, but he's 6'6" and he likes to run, and the Jets can't tackle. So that is scary. You have Jonathan Taylor also. Like, the Cardinals didn't run it as much as I thought they would, but they broke every tackle with James Conner, with Kyler Murray, with Trey McBride. The Colts, Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, I would think they're going to run the ball down their throat. And I mean, it would be pretty Jets fashion to get Anthony Richardson. All of a sudden he has a good passing game. Like it's like, he comes back and he's reinvigorated against the New York Jets, but he can make mistakes, and the Jets usually are good against young quarterbacks, but they haven't faced anybody like him. Yeah. They haven't faced anybody like him physically that can run like he can, because that's his strength. I mean, he puts himself at risk a lot. That's why he gets hurt a lot. The whole Joe Flacco against the Jets thing would have been fun, but Flacco is kind of clearly like Rodgers, maybe not physically the same anymore. He was pretty bad the last couple of weeks. So I actually thought they had a better chance against Flacco than they do against Richardson. I think they should win this game. We say that every week. They're the more talented team, blah, blah, blah. Colts are kind of a mess too, so that's kind of like an underrated part of this. The Cardinals were not a mess, and the Jets are more talented. The Colts definitely are. The way they handled that quarterback situation was very Jetsian. Like benching him it feels like maybe ownership was involved. That's just me theorizing, but benching him for Flacco being terrible, and then putting Richardson back in
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later.
I thought the quote was interesting from Steichen. I have it here because, I mean, I don't know. He said, he needed to take greater command of his off-field preparation, attention to detail. And over the last 2 weeks, he's made strides in those areas, big time strides in becoming a pro's pro. I don't think those things happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And Steichen also said something like, it's not because of performance that he benched Flacco, but that is absolutely.
But he had 3 interceptions and a fumble last week.
If Flacco is good the last 2 weeks and they win like 1 of 2, then he is still the quarterback. So, so they've been a sneaky mess for a while because they shuffle through these quarterbacks so frequently. Ever since Peyton left, since Andrew Luck retired, they've just been a mess. And Chris Ballard has somehow survived this long, and I have no idea how. He's the most overrated general manager I can remember, and I can't imagine he survives this. But it's going to be interesting to see. Is this like does Anthony Richardson have the Zach Wilson versus Texans game? Because remember last year the whole drama with him not wanting to play, which we reported, and then he goes out against the Texans and has the best game of his career. Like, is Richardson going to be motivated like that? Is he going to come out and just dominate? Like, maybe. Like, I don't think that can be ruled out. And the Jets defense doesn't look as scary as it used to. So, the Colts, they have some talent. Like I said, Jonathan Taylor. They have a running quarterback who's good at running the ball. They have Michael Pittman and Josh Downs are decent receivers. They have some talent on defense. But ultimately, I believe the Jets are favored by like 3 points. They should win this game. And they should dominate a young quarterback who is inaccurate and was like completing less than 50% of his passes when he got benched. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel confident in the Jets beating anybody right now. And I'm not even sure I'm frankly want to pick who's going to win this game because it's going to be an ugly one. But yeah, they should win.
You keep going back, like if they had won last week or beaten the Patriots,
yeah,
this would be a situation where you win, and you pass the Colts in the standings, right? Like in the wild card race, like win and move up. And that's what we talked about on Monday, the celebration before the game between Joe Douglas and the front office when they saw the Colts lose that game to the Bills.
Bad.
Here we go. Like, we're on our way with our great run of wins we're going to put together. It just doesn't happen. It just didn't happen. Anything else on the Colts? Let's talk about the offensive line. Olu, plenty of talk now around. I assume there's conversations within the building because it's everywhere else about the fact that it's time to just make the switch at left tackle. Tyron Smith is just, the amazing thing is he stayed healthy. Like, that part of the plan has worked. Like the rest days and everything they've done through training camp, he's kept him healthy. He just hasn't been good. 7 sacks allowed this season after allowing another one on Sunday. Fashanu played 33 snaps in the second half, 75.7 PFF grade, which is the second highest on the Jets, 83.7 in run blocking, which was second best behind John Simpson. Sorry if you had those numbers and I stole them from you, Zach, but no. This is what you want. And it's interesting because he wasn't good at right tackle, but he's a left tackle. They were trying to fit him in at right tackle because they needed him. But now you see, like, okay, maybe this guy is the left tackle of the future.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we won't see Tyron again. They were kind of vague about if he would go on injured reserve. If he goes on injured reserve, he's done as a Jet ultimately. But even if he's not, and I know it's hard to bench a guy who's going to be a Hall of Famer and you respect so much and all that stuff, but Olu is the future. This team is not going to the playoffs. Give Olu the last however many games I have left, 7 games. Give him those games. See what he has. Give him the experience. Go into next year feeling good about your offensive line, which, I think an underrated part of this season, because it's been such a disaster, is I think the offensive line has generally not been as bad as you would think. They haven't been perfect, certainly. I think Rodgers holds on to the ball too long sometimes. I saw him blaming the offensive line for why he doesn't throw it deep, which I feel like didn't get a lot of play, but he was saying they need to block longer or something. But like, he is very clearly not even looking down the field. So I thought that was BS. But you look at this offensive line, you have Olu at left tackle for next year. You lock that in. John Simpson has been quite good, honestly, like better than I expected. Joe Tippmann, solid center, not a star, but I think he's solid. AVT, when he's healthy, is good. And I think you could argue they should bring back Morgan Moses. If not, draft somebody and put them in there. And that's a pretty solid offensive line to build around. So if there's any positive, is that maybe Joe Douglas finally stumbled into like a pretty decent offensive line. It only took him at the very end in the 6th year when all hope was lost. But clearly they needed more than just a better offensive line. They have a lot of other issues. But I think John Simpson's been one of the biggest surprises for me because I didn't really know much about him. And I think he's been pretty good. I think PFF has him as one of the 5 best guards so far this season. But yeah, Olu, a lot of their future banks on Olu being good. So I say you get him the experience, whether Tyron's coming back or not. Maybe even if Tyron doesn't want to agree to that, maybe you grant him his release. I'm not saying they will, but like they did that with Dalvin Cook last year, if you remember. You just bite the bullet, let him go sign somewhere else if he really wants to. I'm sure somebody needs a left tackle right now that would sign him. That's kind of where my head would be at, but I couldn't get a read based on Ulbricht's answer if that they're really considering just plugging Olu in permanently. Or, I mean, again, the decision might be made for them if Tyron Smith's neck injury is that bad. He's not going to play through it. So, but yeah, I think it's Olu's time, and they absolutely should start him.
Yeah, you have to, and see what you have there. And if Tyron Smith is, maybe he's at the point where he's like, okay, this is probably it for me anyway. I can just keep working with this young kid and like pay it forward a little bit here, because it seems like he is that kind of a player, right? That like through example and likes to be someone guys look up to. So, hey, who knows? But yeah, there's no point in keeping going, because even if Olu goes through like the bumps and the missteps of being a rookie, he's still going to be better than what Tyron Smith has been giving you. So, all right. That's up for the Colts. And as Aaron Rodgers said this week, the Jets not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, Zach. So there's that. He also brought up pride, playing for pride, which honestly should be the biggest thing.
Yes,
these guys playing for pride. Playing for the tape is one thing you always say on bad teams, right? Like you got to put a good tape out there, because when you're on a bad team, there's going to be a lot of change and you need something to send around to the other team. So there's plenty of reasons to keep playing hard. We'll see what happens with the Colts. And if one win can, be not, even if they just put a few wins together here and made it interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's what you want though, because then you push yourself into
then you lose your draft status, right?
Which
Although if you're going for a quarterback, it probably doesn't matter, right? Like, Cam Ward is probably, like you said, top 5. But other than that, like, I think it's finding the guy that's like a late first rounder that's going to be a good NFL. Like, there's always that guy.
Yeah.
Are the Jets capable of finding that guy?
Or you find like a Jalen Hurts and develop him in the second round, like the Eagles did.
Yeah. There's good quarterbacks to be had that aren't necessarily top 5 picks, and the top 5 picks seems like more often than not they don't work out these days.
Well, it's just if you pick the wrong guy,
shot. Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. I'll leave everybody.
I think so. Yeah.
And we will be back on Monday to recap the Colts game. Not sure what time yet. It's a home game though, so we probably get it going early in the morning on Monday. We'll recap that one. Hopefully it's a win, get this team back on some sort of track, so it's not just this like spiral the whole season. So we'll talk to everybody then. Thanks for joining the Flight Plan Podcast.